So I want to make a video here about aesthetics when it comes to human aesthetics, beautiful women, handsome men, etc. Now, the context of this, the reason I want to talk about the subject, I've just watched a video by the Amazing Atheist. I've come across a few of his videos before, and I I quite like a lot of the things he has to say. I don't quite go about the same approach, but I find myself relating and agreeing with a lot of what the guy says. I think he raises important points. Anyway, he's spoken in his last video about the sad death of Carrie Fisher, who was, of course, most famous for her role in Star Wars. Well, apparently, I haven't seen this myself, but I absolutely believe it because it's exactly the sort of thing they would do. Apparently, feminists have been complaining that some of the eulogies to Carrie Fisher have been focusing on the aesthetic side of things. That is to say, she is famous for Princess Leia in the gold bikini, right? So, every teenage boy growing up in the late 70s, every straight teenage boy growing up in the late 70s probably fantasized about Princess Leia or had a poster of Princess Leia. You know, this was a cultural icon in the sense of the 70s in the way that Marilyn Monroe's dress was of the 50s. I remember the Friends episode where Ross gets Rachel to dress up as Princess Leia in the gold bikini. It's a very funny episode. Anyway, feminists have been bemoaning this, presumably because it objectifies her, and they're attacking the fact that, for example, the comedian Steve Martin mentioned that when he first met her, he noticed her beauty. Now, as I understand it, Steve Martin was a good friend of Carrie Fisher, so he's going to know her a lot better than feminists did. Um, and I really agree with a lot of the points that Amazing Atheist was making here because there is this obsession that feminists have with fetishism, and yet it isn't consistent because I'll give you an example. Page three in the Sun newspaper. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a fan of the Sun in any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I don't think probably Topless Lady has a place in a national newspaper. Nevertheless, there is hypocrisy in the whole campaign to ban Page three because the same feminists who were complaining about that wouldn't have an issue or presumably wouldn't have an issue with Monet's Olympia. Manet's Olympia, I should say, that was a famous piece of art from 1861. The Prudish Society of the time did, I believe the portrait was vandalized. But basically, if it is, there's a certain snobbery among feminists, and it's something I think needs to be called out. If it is something that is directed at, frankly, a working class audience, the Sun, we sort of have the stereotype of white van drivers and so on. You know, if it's a working class man appreciating the feminine form in that sense, feminists will get right into it. But if it's something that's seen as cultured, such as Manet's Olympia, that's less of a controversy. Yet fundamentally, it's the same thing: a depiction of a semi-naked woman. Now, you know, I wasn't that familiar with Carrie Fisher, and you are as Princess Leia. And if someone said Carrie Fisher to me, that's immediately what I would think of. In fact, I wasn't aware of all her mental health advocacy until quite recently. But he raised a good point. He said this whole thing about aestheticism, it's really vilified. But the fact of the matter is, you notice someone's physical appearance, looks, before you can gauge, for example, their wits or how smart they are, whether they can speak three languages or whatever. The fact of the matter is, the first thing you notice about someone visually is how they look. Okay, my first girlfriend, whom I love very much, we're still close friends. I love her very much. I still do, in fact. The first thing I noticed about her was her beauty, and I absolutely admit that. She came into a room, it was sort of a social club we both went to, and it was actually some of the girls at the other side of the table I was chatting to, and they said, "Whoa, you're stunning." So naturally, I turned around and I saw this beautiful young woman. She was wearing a white not a dress, but it was like a white, sort of white outfit at the time. And I just remember how striking she was. I still find it astonishing that, you know, Mr. Joe Average here got lady who could be a model as far as I'm concerned, um, to be my girlfriend. And that's just a fact. I mean, she's a hell of a lot better looking than me. And I, I make no apology for saying that my former girlfriend, we're just friends now due to circumstance, but that's beside the point, is a beautiful woman. And I often tell her that, and she says thank you. She appreciates it. And she puts lots of photographs of herself on, actually, it's Chinese social media she uses, but she has some truly stunning pictures, and I tell her that. Now, most of my female friends, when I compliment them, they thank me because they know the spirit in which it is given. And I think it is extremely important to differentiate between an honest compliment and a sleazy compliment. Now, if I went up to a woman I didn't know, or even a woman I did know, and said, "Oh, wonderful tits, baby," then she would probably slap me, and rightly so. That's harassment. That's inappropriate, and that it's just sleazy. But if I said to a woman that I did know, "Oh, you look wonderful today," um, or you're beautiful in that dress," I honestly can say that the women I know and respect would thank me because they know the spirit in which it is given. And I've been complimented, in certain ways I've dressed and so on, and I've thanked the person doing it. I hate this culture whereby people have a massive chip on their shoulder and find a way to be offended by everything. It's pathetic. I really think that compliments should be taken in the nature in which they are given. And I mean compliments, I'm not talking about harassment because there is a difference. The problem is for feminists, compliments are harassment. They don't differentiate. And that to me is very sad. I should say not all feminists. I should say the more hardline feminists. There are some feminists who, to be fair, are not quite as you know overly sensitive. But I just think that's unfortunate and so predictable. I mean, the obnoxious way that they are actually dictating to people how to grieve over the death of a famous actress. Steve Martin knew her. So what right do feminists have to tell him he has no right to talk about the fact that it's the first thing he noticed? It's just stupid. You know, this culture that actually, ironically, it's something that feminists have in common with Islamist hardliners or Puritan hardliners 400 years ago. There's some irony in that because we know that Islamists have a terrible attitude to women, and yet feminists actually have the same controlling outlook. And they might not blow people up, but they have that sort of vilification of female beauty. Unless, of course, if the woman doing it calls herself a feminist, so that's fine. But if the woman doing it, say she's a singer or an actress, doesn't call herself a feminist, and men appreciate her, then that's terrible. Oh, then she's a stupid slave. She's subservient to men, and the wicked men are objectifying her. I don't particularly like this word objectification. I think it's one of those words that gets thrown around and overused. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. If a woman is only kind of appreciated for her sexuality, I do understand why that's contentious. But what I'm arguing is that physical attractiveness is not a bad thing. It's a basic part of human nature. And you know that phrase, oh, it's what's on the inside that counts. Well, I agree with it. Of course, you could have a beautiful woman who's a horrible personality and a plain woman who's a lovely person. Of course, that's true. But recognizing beauty it shouldn't be a controversial thing. Or recognizing a handsome man, and I suppose there is less focus on that. But the point of the matter, well, actually, is there really any difference between, let's say, a Chippendales calendar, or let's say a calendar with shots of Brad Pitt topless? That's just an example. Is it really any different? I don't think so. It's a celebration of human aesthetics, and that is something that goes back millennium. You know, it's something going way, 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 way back to the ancient Egyptians and beyond. It's a fundamental part of human society, of the state of being a human being. And of course, it's what's on the inside that matters. someone's personality and so on. I've known attractive women who haven't had good personalities, but in the end of the day, I am a heterosexual man, and I'm still going to consider, yeah, she's beautiful. She might be a bitch, but yeah, she is beautiful. It's just a fact. It's a basic fact that I have a beard in this video. Having a beard doesn't indicate whether I'm a good guy or an asshole. It's irrelevant. Physical attractiveness is just a fact. And of course, it varies from culture to culture and so on. But what I really resent is people dictating to others who they should be attracted to. And actually, I'm not talking here about homophobia and so on, because as a society, we condemn bigotry, and rightly so. But it's actually starting to go the other way now, whereby if a heterosexual man says a woman is beautiful, that's taboo. What the hell? What the hell? I mean, let's just get some common sense here. I just don't get that. I mean, we're now living in an age where social justice warriors are creating a situation whereby if a heterosexual man acknowledges female beauty, then he's objectifying her. And beauty, can be beauty on the face. You can have a really pretty face, or it could be, yeah, the beauty of the human form. Now, obviously, there's a difference between, a classy pose and a slutty pose. I get that, but in the end of the day, attraction is attraction, and I just hate this controlling aspect to it. Obviously, there's certain circumstances where there should be interjections if someone is clearly being exploited, but I'm sorry, and I know feminists won't agree with this, but there's a massive difference between a woman who is getting a hell of a lot of money for what she is doing, fully knowing what she is doing. So, I've no sympathy with highly paid Hollywood actresses who one day do a photo shoot for a men's magazine and then the next day whinge about it and say, oh, men are objectifying me. Give me a break. That is a very, very different situation than a teenage girl being forced into prostitution by some thug. And it is so important that we do differentiate, because by lumping all of this together, what feminists actually do is downplay the seriousness of exploitation, because they are putting it into everything else. And that for me is a problem. So, for goodness sake, let's stop vilifying attraction, physical attraction. It's a basic part of humanity, it always has been. And anyone that says that they never notice it or they don't care about it, I think they're lying. I do agree that there are people who it wouldn't be such a big thing for them. I totally understand that. But to say, put it this way, if unless you're senile and you're asexual, and that's fine, each to their own. But unless you're senile and asexual, then I refuse to believe that anyone doesn't have sexual attraction. I just don't believe that, because it is a basic part of humanity, and there's nothing wrong with that, provided it's consensual, provided there's no harassment involved, etc. I mean, I just detest the way that SJWs are, and he was right. What the amazing atheist said, he was right. They're trying to control how people grieve. If men remember Carrie Fisher as a sexy Princess Leia, great. It made her a lot of money. She got success from that role, and those are the facts. If as a man I became famous for having a good build, I don't at the moment, but let's say I worked hard to get a six pack and I became famous for that. Could I complain? Hardly. Not when I've brought attention to it. So that's all I'm saying. Let's have some common sense in this. Incidentally, by the way, I have posted photos like pulling weights and stuff just for a little bit of ego. I don't care. I'm admitting that. Not all the time, just occasionally, because everyone does, whatever. And, when female friends compliment it, when they give me thumbs up, do I like it? Hell yes. I don't see it as objectification. It's aesthetic appeal. It's my friends recognize that, oh, here's a guy that looks after himself. I don't think they're objectifying me. So let's just get some grasp of reality here and stop being so uptight about every damn thing. And let's just differentiate between appreciation of the human form, which is fine, and harassment, which is not. There is a massive difference, and the problem is SJWs and hardline feminists don't recognise the difference. So I think that's unfortunate. Okay, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts.